Hey everybody, it's JJ and we're back again for another ASUS PC DIY stream. It's a really exciting day. This is actually one that we've been actually waiting for a long time. I know for a lot of you, you have been excited about what is going to be the next generation for the ASUS AIO coolers that we have coming to the market. And there's been a lot of kind of discussion in the community on when we were going to be seeing essentially the next generation of the Ryu, especially the RYUJIN after we essentially released the RYU III. And so we're finally excited to now be able to give you guys essentially the first look at what we're going to have with our next generation AIO with the RYUJIN III. So let's get ready to go ahead and take a look at this one. It's a very, very exciting cooler. We've got some really cool features and functions that we've designed for this generation that's just going to make ultimately I think the build experience that much cleaner, that much simpler for you. And of course, as always, this thing is going to look fantastic, and it's of course going to also offer you great performance. So we're definitely going to get ready to jump into it. Let's go ahead and quickly just take a look at a little bit of a video, guys, before we jump into all the exciting new things that are specific to the RYUJIN III for this generation. So let's go ahead and take a little bit of a closer look here. All right, so right there, you can already see one of the key elements that's going to be, of course, a bit different on this generation is, of course, the fan design, and we're definitely going to be talking about that. But really from top to bottom, there's actually probably not one element that hasn't actually been maybe reevaluated, fine-tuned, or improved upon within this generation. So we've got a new pump, we've got, of course, new fans, we've got even higher level of performance, we've got actually a new mounting mechanism in terms of the actual retention plate, and a whole lot more. So we're going to actually be talking about all that and a lot more to be able to give you insight in terms of what we got going on. Let's see who we have joining us here in the stream. As always, we've got a fantastic set of community members. We've got, let's see, Michael joining us. Fantastic. Thanks so much for joining us here in the stream. We've got Juno, I see a fellow ASUS marketing team member, so she's down there to maybe help catch any comments that I might not be able to jump into. We've got Liquify Mods. Fantastic, man. Happy to have you here so much in the stream. Very, very cool. We've got Michael also joining us here. We've got Sneff, the one and only one of the best modders and builders in the game, joining us here. Fantastic to have you. Thanks so much. We've got Rick. Rick888, happy to have you here, man. Thanks so much. And Neil, happy to have you here as well. And definitely, I think one of the biggest members of Team ROG, we've got Connor Johnson joining us. So fantastic. With that, let's get ready to go ahead and jump into it. A lot of really cool things to be able to touch on. So let's go ahead and take a little bit of a closer look here at the RYUJIN III before we talk about what's new for this generation. So if we just take a little bit of a closer look on face value, it's going to look actually pretty similar to what we had in the previous generation. We're actually going to have quite a number of models, including an exciting update for those of you that are finally maybe want something like what I've got here next to me in terms of a white model. But on the outside, it'll look pretty similar, right? A high performance 360mm AIO based solution, but there's definitely a lot more that's going on. So let's go ahead and talk a bit about actually what we've got new for this generation, all right? So let me go ahead and bring this up for you guys. And we'll take a closer look here. Fantastic. We'll get that there. And this works perfect. Okay, great. All right. So let's take a look here. So taking a look kind of from a high level perspective, there's actually quite a number of things that we've gone ahead and updated for this generation. So one of the first things you're going to see first and foremost is going to be a brand new AceGen Asetek based pump design. This is going to allow for actually an overall improved level of performance. This is actually something that we already introduced into our current RYU III based AIO cooler. We're actually the first 8th gen based Asetek based AIO cooler that came on the market. You can actually see that represented here by this kind of cool little exploded diagram, which actually will show you kind of a breakdown of all the elements that are inside of the RYUJIN. And along this, there's actually some complementary elements that have also been incorporated, such as thicker tubing, improved flow rate. So essentially, you're getting an overall improved experience relative to the overall performance, okay? Now, next item is going to be the actual cold plate. The cold plate is actually quite a bit larger. So definitely as we've moved into newer CPUs that have come to market, especially with the latest generation 12th gen 13 series CPUs, latest generation Ryzen 7000 series CPUs, you essentially have IHS, or essentially CPU surface area, right, that you're attempting to make contact with the base of your cooler, that has become much larger. And to be able to more optimally be able to provide better cooling performance, it can be beneficial to essentially have this larger cold plate. And so that larger cold plate is just in alignment with essentially what we're seeing for the latest generation series of CPUs when it comes to cooling performance. On the radiator side, we've also gone ahead and made another update here. So the radiator, you're actually seeing a bump up in terms of its actually thickness. So we're going from 27 millimeters to 30 millimeters. Now, in a little bit, that would be have to something that you will have to account for relative to, let's say, mechanical interoperability and compatibility, making sure your chassis has that. But this is still pretty nominally well spaced and sized, so that for the vast majority of builders and the vast majority of chassis, it shouldn't be a factor. But of course, it will aid in terms of the overall performance. Now, one of maybe the biggest updates that we're going to have here is going to be the inclusion of our brand new ROG MF-12S fans. So in the prior generation, we already essentially had introduced our new static pressure optimized ring barrier based design fans. Very, very performant actually aRGB fans. Historically, a lot of times in an aRGB fan, you usually are going to be sacrificing a bit of performance, especially compared to a traditional, let's say, non-RGB fan, which is part of the reason why we've also offered the Noctua based editions, and we will actually be offering it for this generation as well. But you're actually getting a bump up to even have a higher level of RPM, so that for those that are really looking to maximize cooling performance, these fans are going to offer a great level of airflow, great level of static pressure performance. Now, you'll also see something right there in terms of the actual fan, if you haven't noticed it, but that's going to be definitely represented right here, I think a little bit in this image that you can see here, and that's going to be a magnetic daisy chain design. So I know for a lot of people that have been looking to be able to simplify the experience, make it a little bit cleaner, this is going to be a fantastic option, especially if maybe you want to go for a more compact type build, maybe something like in our AP201 chassis, or you just essentially want that little bit more of that seamless look. This is really going to make it quite a bit more seamless, quite a bit more easy for you to go ahead and get up and running, because literally just connect them together and you will be able to pass through the actual aRGB and the fan control all through the daisy chain connection. And there's just then one connector that you'll have to connect either to the left or to the right hand side, so it's exposed on either side, giving you flexibility to route it whatever makes sense for your chassis, so that you can then go ahead and have the aRGB control as well as your fan control. And we'll talk a little bit more about this, but the cool thing is some design changes in terms of the connections allow for, I think, a little bit even more flexibility in terms of how you can actually manage your RYUJIN III. Now, the display, we already kind of really were the industry leader here. Many of the other displays on the market, you're going to be talking about a quite a bit smaller display, so usually maybe something like 2.1 inches, 2.3 inches, something like that. The RYUJIN III was really the benchmark, right? 3.5 inches, but we've gone ahead and updated it with twice the internal memory. It has 24-bit color support and now 60 frames a second. This essentially update to the internal memory will allow you to have essentially with that 60 frames a second, clearer, smoother animations. And overall, if you're somebody that wants to put in animations, GIFs, things along those lines, they're just going to look that much better. So this is a really, really nice update in terms of just giving you a superior level of quality when it comes to the on-screen assets that are going to be there. And as I noted there, twice the onboard memory, so from 16 megabytes to 32 megabytes. We've also gone ahead and revised the VRM assist fan. It's actually even more performant than in the prior generation. So this is actually going to even allow for better actually airflow performance for the surrounding VRM assembly. So if you guys are not familiar with the term VRM assembly, those are all your power regulation components that are on your motherboard. So things like your capacitors, your inductors, your power stages, and they're all underneath these heat sinks. And so the RYUJIN has been designed with now a new axial tech fan that's actually even larger and has a little bit more of an optimized actually airflow characteristic, which works with the venting that comes on the side of the magnetic housing, and that helps to provide airflow to that VRM assembly. Now, for a lot of our products, the VRM assembly is already so performant that you don't need the active airflow, but if you're just looking for that additional kind of benefit, that is one of the really cool things that the RYUJIN brings to the table, and it's been a hallmark since that's the very first RYUJIN, is that integrated VRM assist fan. Now, in addition to that, rounding things out, of course, you're going to see in the last two items right here is that we've got the aluminum bezel. So this is even a little bit more of a premium kind of touch point right here on the unit, and then now available in white. So we know that a huge number of people have been wanting to see a RYUJIN. Now, we already have a number of fantastic coolers in white, like the ROG STRIX LC series and the RYU III that are both available in white, but we are now excited to be able to introduce and be able to offer the RYUJIN III in a white variant. So you can see quite a number of exciting updates just for this generation, where you might just look at the model, you might not think, is there that many changes? But actually there's a lot that has been put into this model to really be able to elevate, I think, the experience and give you that much of a better AIO. All right, so that takes us through there, guys. And in a moment, I'm going to go ahead and quickly take a look at your questions, but I do have still more items that I want to cover. We want to go through a lot of pieces here, so let's go ahead and just see what we got going. Snef is giving us some great feedback. Is goes, wow, want one for sure. Connor Johnson is saying, wow, that VRM assist fan is actually going to make a big difference in the thermals. Yeah, and we actually have a very, very cool thermographic image to actually be able to show you the benefit that we've been able to see in terms of our internal testing. Really, really cool. Michael saying, hi JJ, wow, now I want to exchange it for my RYUJIN III later this evening. Love it, fantastic, very, very cool. So yeah, there's a lot of really, really cool improvements here, guys. But now I want to touch about something that you might not necessarily seem like it makes sense, but let's actually go ahead and talk about some of the items that are the same, right? And I think this is important too, because there's a lot of really great things that the RYUJIN III did bring to the table, excuse me, the RYUJIN II brought to the table that we did want to keep on the RYUJIN III. So what's the same here? One is that really large, big dynamic display, right? Already, like I said, is class leading, right? 3.5-inch base display. The magnetic pump housing. One of the really cool things about the RYUJIN is that you had the flexibility that you could essentially go in a vertical or in a horizontal configuration, right? So outside of the customization options you had within the Armoury Crate software, it allowed you to essentially just change it up, go with a different type of look and feel. So if you wanted to go with the vertical layout, if you wanted to go with the horizontal layout, you just lift that magnetic pump housing and you were good to go. That also made accessibility to cleaning things like the VRM assist fan, or even sometimes cable management and routing, easier, because you could remove the pump housing, and when you're finished up with everything in the mounting, you could pump the pump housing back. Another thing that is still pretty unique to the RYUJIN is that we don't just look at giving you one stat or maybe two stats on the screen. We actually offer up to 4 stats that can be integrated within the Armoury Crate suite, and we continue to offer, of course, a lot of customization for you to be able to go in and tailor things. Hey guys, just popping back here. Looks like there might have been a little bit of a dropout, so I just want to make sure that we are okay. So coming back in here again, as I was noting, is that essentially when we're talking about items that are the same here, give me one second here. Items that are the same, we do have actually the flexibility to be able to give you not only a single type of display, a dual type of display, triple type display, or a quadruple. So that essentially just means that the elements that can fill up the display, you can have up to 4 items. So if you want to have like your fan speed, your temperature, your clock speed, and your voltage, right, you can actually have 4 items present. So just gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of what can be presented on the screen. You're also going to have that 1-year AIDA64 license. That in itself is actually a really nice premium, because if you want a great utility that's going to allow you to be able to stress test the cooler, right? You want to be able to check your temperatures more in depth. You want to be able to create customized AIDA64 templates and essentially screen interfaces. That is also going to be included in there. So it's a really nice value add. There's no other cooler on the market that's coming with that deep and rich of a utility that's essentially bundled in. You get that VRM cooler, right, which I said has also been upgraded. The bottom mounting tubing design, which is something that we revised from the first generation RYUJIN. And that just makes, I think, mounting the unit a little bit easier. Still a 6-year warranty. We're also still going to maintain the Noctua base model. So for those of you guys that are not in the RGB crowd, don't worry, we still got you covered. We're going to have those premium IPPC Noctua fans that come included with the unit, and you'll be good to go. And lastly, a really good balance in terms of that cable length with 400 millimeter cable length. So all the way around, really, really nice in terms of, I think, like I said, the new and the things that were great about the RYUJIN. So now let's go ahead and take a closer look here and see which models we will actually have in terms of the RYUJIN III. So give me a second here. All right, so taking a look at what we're going to be offering, you can see that we will actually have a total of 6 RYUJIN models, right? So 2 models will be essentially what we refer to like as the Noctua edition. These will essentially carry all of the benefits that we've talked about, except for the ROG magnetic daisy chain fan design, right? Because these are using Noctua IPPC based fans. Very premium, high performant fans, great balance in terms of acoustics to airflow to static pressure, really clean, and a great option if you're just looking for a high performance cooler and you want, of course, the benefits that this unit brings, whether it's the VRM assist fan, the nice display, the premium level of performance, this is going to be a great option for you. So we will have the 240 and the 360 Noctua based options. In addition to that, we will then have the aRGB editions, which will be default black, right? So you'll have the 240 millimeter and you'll have the 360 millimeter. And then last but not least, new is we will be introducing, of course, the white models. So with the white models, that means you will have similarly same thing, 240 millimeter and a 360 millimeter based offering. So all essentially really, really clear, really, really easy, really nice to be able to kind of just pick the model that's going to make the best sense for you. Okay. So I'm a big fan of this type of just flexibility. And again, we are not going to be removing any of the other current AIO coolers that we have in our current lineup. So we will still be offering the ROG STRIX LC II series. So if you're looking for something that's a little bit more cost aggressive, but still offers you great performance, you can get in white, you can get in black, you want a 240, a 280, or a 360, we've got the STRIX LC series. If you're going to be wanting, like I said, something that's going to be a little bit different in terms of the display, still great performance, we have the RYU models, which have, of course, that circular pump mount design as opposed to a kind of a square mount design, and with the anime matrix pixel display, and that is also available in black and also available in white. And for in the interim period, the RYUJIN II won't be immediately available. But we will be bringing inventory back in. So we will actually be having later on in the year essentially a period where you'll have both the RYUJIN II and the RYUJIN III. We don't have pricing to detail at today. The formalized availability as well as the pricing will be releasing a little bit later as we expect the launch for this to happen probably towards the very end of next month in terms of the actual rollout for this model. But we wanted to give you this first look preview to kind of get a sense of this. But for those of you that may kind of just be wondering, hey, maybe I still really love all the elements of the RYUJIN II and I don't need maybe some of those other things that might exist on the RYUJIN III, we will be bringing in more RYUJIN II at a later date. So we will essentially have RYU, RYUJIN II, and RYUJIN III. Okay. All right, so that is going to cover us in terms of that regard. So let's go ahead and again, just take a little bit of a closer look, I think, at the models right here, give you a little bit of a recap of essentially what we're talking about kind of for the features, functions, and the specifications. Take a look, of course, at those magnetic designs and some other kind of cool points that we have kind of going on here, right? So let's go ahead and just bring this up here. So like I said, externally, you're pretty much going to have a very, very similar design. There's not going to be anything that's going to change it up too much. It's going to pretty much feel very similar to what we have within the current generation. On the inside, though, is where there's, like I said, been a lot of changes here, right? Where you have the upgraded VRM assist fan, right, which is now our axial tech-based design. It's larger, it's more performant. You move to that 8th gen pump design, right? And like I said, that also includes that the tubing is thicker in terms of its diameter, right? There's more actually flow. Improved flow rate, and ultimately better performance. That larger cold plate as well, like I said, it's a big improvement in terms of the cold plate, and then the actual retention kit itself is also been improved, right? And we have a metal retention kit. So kind of there's not just on the outside, right, but a lot of elements on the inside to be able to provide you a better experience. Right? And again, remember when looking at the screen, it's going to look very similar, 3.5 inches, but critically we have upgraded, right, from 16 megabytes to 32 megabytes and that 60 frame support, right? And this ultimately allows just for smoother and clearer animation for your GIFs and your videos that you want to have loaded up on the RYUJIN. Okay, and for those of you wondering about, again, those performance, keep in mind that performance, when we denote things like, static pressure and airflow, the majority of users don't run their fans at 100%, right? Most of the time, you're probably running somewhere between a fan value of maybe conservatively like 400 RPM when your system might be maybe idling, and you could be going up to maybe like about, 1400 RPM or so. That's generally what most users tend to run. Most users don't tend to generally run a super aggressive fan curve. So your highest values are always going to be represented at 100% fan speed. It's more important to actually get a sense of how the fan really performs in what we refer to kind of as the sweet spot of the fan curve. And in this regard, these fans are very performant and offer a really, really strong level of performance. And as I noted, right, an upgrade from the prior generation is essentially a bump up from 2000 RPM to 2200 RPM. And of course, critically is going to be the magnetic daisy chain based design. And so that is going to be a really, really cool element that we have here. So let's go ahead and take a little bit of a closer look here at that magnetic daisy chain design. Let me go ahead and load this up here. All right, and we kind of can show you, yeah, I think right here, let's bring this one up. Give me 1 second, guys. All right, and we kind of can show you, yeah, I think right here, let's bring this one up. Okay, here we go. And we'll show you this here. So here, of course, you can see the system set up, right? Very, very clear, very easy, but it's just that simple, right? Again, let's just go back. Let's go back there one more time, and you can just see how easy it will be for you to essentially be able to make those connections. So really, really simplified. And I think I have a secondary image here, what I'll bring up in actually our manual, but you'll actually have the connectors on this end, and you'll also have the connector on this end. So when you're actually connecting the aRGB and the fan cable, which would then be routed to the motherboard, it's just a very simple process. Just pick the left or the right hand side, and you'll be able to go ahead and interface that directly to the motherboard, okay? Hey, H2O Computers, happy for joining. Thanks so much. Somebody's asking about the fans being sold separately. At this time, we have no plans. We are still working essentially on our next generation ROG fans. Right now, we have some great options with the XF120 and the Tough Gaming 120mm aRGB fans, and we will have actually the white editions coming out in the not too distant future. But right now, we don't have any plans to sell these fans independently. They will be only included with the RYUJIN, okay? So that is going to be inherently with the RYUJIN III, okay? And I'm also going to show you guys some little cool elements that will actually be present in terms of, I think, some subtle details, like the actual screws that come included with the radiator already have the washers pre-affixed. Sometimes you guys may notice this, sometimes you may not notice this. Personally, I'm a big fan of this type of design because it actually makes that when you're installing the radiator, you don't have to worry about kind of sometimes the washer slipping because it's actually already pre-affixed. It makes the kind of installation experience a little bit simpler. But I do want to go ahead and show you guys one element here, so give me 1 second to bring up the manual and kind of show you a little bit one of the kind of connection options in terms of how it will work here. So if we take a closer look here at our kind of guide, our manual that will be available for the RYUJIN III, you'll see here that once it's been mounted into your chassis, right? So here we're introducing kind of your traditional top mount configuration. You can see that the cable will essentially connect right there to the end, and you will see that you have a 3-pin header, and then you have your 4-pin fan header. So you pretty much just run that to your chassis like you normally would. So it's very straightforward. And for those of you that essentially do not want to have to use the Armor Crate software interface, this does also allow for a very simplified level of control that you can go ahead and still tune the fans all from within the UEFI environment. So if you want to use the UEFI BIOS to be able to set your fan curves, you can still do that route because you're not going through a secondary controller. There's nothing along those lines. It's quite simple in terms of the actual process. Now, in addition to that, let me go a little bit over here and we'll jump into another section, is you'll actually see here for the fans that you'll notice there's your actual little quick connector, very, very simple. And you'll notice there's an included cable on the inside. And as I noted, you can do it on the left or you can do it on the right hand side. It's up to you. Just make that connection and then you're going to run those corresponding cables out to the motherboard. So very, very, very simple in terms of the overall cable management, okay? And as I noted here, the cables, they do have essentially those washers prefixed, so it just makes the installation experience really smooth, really easy. I think it balances things out really nicely. If you're somebody that also generally doesn't use a washer for installing your rads, I generally recommend it. So it usually helps to kind of distribute things out a little bit more evenly, all right? And one other element too that I wanted to go ahead and note here that some users may not be aware of that we started doing with our RYU III is that you will actually find that the unit does come included with a protective, essentially, guard. There's a plastic guard that comes on the radiator on both sides. And so you do want to remove this. There's actually a clear label that says, please remove. But the reason why we've done this is let me know in the chat. Have you been one of the users that potentially have gotten a radiator and you found that maybe the radiator might have been nicked or damaged, maybe bent, or maybe when you were installing it, you inadvertently bent it or damaged it yourself? You maybe had a screwdriver, let it slip, and you kind of poked it and you tapped it and it might have actually damaged it. Well, to make this a little bit safer for you, a little bit easier for you, there is this really nice protective guard. So once you get to the point that you're ready to actually install those fans, you can go ahead and remove those protective guards and you don't have to worry about damaging the fins on the radiator. I don't actually know any other radiators that have shipped with this type of little protective guard type of design, so it is a really, really cool little subtle touch, but I think it is a nice touch that we have there. Now, last but not least is going to be a change in terms of how the unit gets set up in terms of a control interface. With the RYUJIN II, you did actually have a control box, and the control box, all your connections ran to the control box. Here, it's going to be a little bit different. And actually, I think it's a bit simpler for users because they don't have to worry about how the box may work or what they need. The control box did give you a little bit more flexibility because you had some maybe additional aRGB outputs in your fan control. But here it's quite simple. You're essentially just going to have one cable for the AIO pump header. So that runs straight to pretty much all of our motherboards have an AIO pump header. You know, unless you're going all the way down to a very, very, very entry-based motherboard. But even models like our, you know, Dash P, Dash A, tough gaming models all have an AIO pump header. So you just connect the AIO pump header, and then independent of the AIO pump header, you have your standard USB 2. And that USB 2 is, of course, what you're going to use to interface and control elements like the screen, right? So that's pretty simple. Just that one USB 2 cable, and then your 4-pin AIO pump cable, and then from there your aRGB and your fan. So very, very simple in terms of the overall connections that you have. All right, so that covers, I think, a good amount there. Let me quickly see if there's any quick questions right there. So yes, Robert is saying, wait, magnetic fans and one cable to control them. Yeah, so let's go ahead and we can show you guys that one more time for maybe you that might have missed that. So we are going to go back there, and let me go ahead and actually show off the white model here, and I will show this off and just kind of as a recap again here. So taking a look here at our white model. Again, as a recap on some of these elements, remember we've got that larger cold plate compared to the RYUJIN II. So similar to essentially with the RYUJIN III, because we're using that new 8th gen Asetek based pump, giving us essentially that improved flow, that thicker tubing, the reliability that they are known for, that 6-year warranty that comes along with that. So really great performance there. So again, optimized and really tuned for the latest generation AMD and Intel high performing CPUs. Okay. Here you can see that venting that is present around the entirety of the actual magnetic pump housing. Remember that easily lifts out. So if you want to adjust it in terms of its orientation, vertical or horizontal, you're good to go. And that works with the VRM assist fan, right? That big, beautiful 3.5-inch display, double the memory, right? 60 frames a second support. And then of course you can see the new ROG magnetic daisy chain fans, right? And so here you'll notice those are those little magnetic connectors. So those connectors right there, all you need to do is go ahead and just put them next to each other. They'll connect and you're going to be good to go. And then you have one cable that will then run. There is going to be two outputs. There's going to be essentially an aRGB cable, and there's going to be a 4-pin cable. Now some people ask, well, why would we want to do that? Part of the reason why we did it that way is because there's no proprietary kind of interface. You don't have to have another controller. This will work with any ASUS motherboard, and actually it will work with any motherboard because all motherboards feature right now an aRGB fan header, and they feature a standard 4-pin fan header. So there's no proprietary control boxes that are required. You just go directly to the motherboard. And there you can see. So you can see that just one cable that you would connect all 3 of those, and then you have that one output cable and you're good to go. Okay, so very, very, very simple, very clean, and you are going to be good to go. Yeah, so we have Joy Hustler says this is going to help to keep builds clean. I love it. Yes. No, the fans will not be sold separately at this time. We don't have any plans to sell the fans separately. Tech is letting us know all good elements in one package is great. Yeah, I definitely agree, right? Carlos is also letting us know excellent news on the pump. Yes, very, very cool. So we actually got some feedback from Aaron here. He says, I have 2 RYU's 3s, and the radiator protectors are such an excellent attention to detail. It was always just expected that you'd have bent fins. And I agree. I think that there's anybody that's dealt with a lot of AIO coolers has probably had that time where they've seen that they've had bent fins, and sometimes they bend them and you don't even realize you bent them. You put them in there and maybe just your hand or something, or you drop a screwdriver, something happens and you end up getting it. So it's nice to just be able to keep those in there until you're getting ready to mount your fans in. As I noted, magnetic pump housing, so you can go ahead and remove that so you have access to be able to clean that VRM assist fan if you need to. Okay, and as always, you can be able to control that within the Armory Crate software interface, right? So again, let's just quickly take a look at the models that we've got within the lineup. So I'm going to quickly just kind of re-highlight essentially our models that we have here. And then we'll take just like a clear close-up of each one, and we're going to go through the video one more time and just round out seeing if we have any last questions. So again, we will have 6 models here, where we'll have the Noctua 240, the Noctua 360, the 2 black models, aRGB editions. The Noctua models do not come with essentially the daisy chain magnetic fans. They come with Noctua IPPC based fans, right? So you get all the other elements except for essentially the magnetic daisy chain aRGB fans, right? And then we have the white variants. So the white variants are exactly the same as the black variants. It's just they're in white, but they're beautifully done. And I think anybody that's seen the premium attention to detail that we've done with our white series of components, including the Strix LC II and the RYU III, know that we've done a great job at really, I think, giving you a beautiful, clean white design. But the black is equally really clean, really smooth, really nicely done. It has also a little bit of kind of textural elements too that are present in there. Okay. All right. So let's take a little bit of a closer look here at the 360. Just take a little bit closer look here at some of the key images, and then we're going to touch quickly on the VRM assist temperatures that I did want to go ahead and note, guys. So again, here's just a single shot of the new fans that we have that are included in there. And of course, you will fully be able to control all of this within the ASUS Armoury Crate software interface. But again, because of the new design, it's very simple. If you want to be able to control the fan curve within the, if you want to be able to control the fan curve within the UEFI BIOS, it's very simple because the fans will still just connect to essentially an onboard fan header, right? Okay, and we'll take a quick look here at the white model, and then we're going to take a look at some of the temperature information for what we have for the VRM assist fan. Those, so somebody asking about the Noctua fans, they're Noctua IPPC fans, so they're not the NF-812 fans. Both are still fantastic fans. If you want to swap them out, you can. The frank difference is you're not going to see really that much of a difference in terms of the relative performance, right? They're going to be very similar, right? And part of also the balance is that we felt that the IPPC fans, right? This model kind of design and development when we first implemented predated actually the release of the black Chromax fans. So kind of made sense because it allowed for kind of a color neutral based design. So it was a black to complement the black radiator, the black tubing, everything. So it was already kind of a clean monochrome design aesthetic. Of course, with any one of these models, if you decide that you feel that you do want to change out the fans, you can change out the fans, but the performance is already very, very strong for this. So for the majority of users, it probably wouldn't really make sense, I think, to swap out the fans, but it really comes down to your preference in terms of, do you feel that you want a different design aesthetic for your fans, or whatnot, things along those lines, right? Okay, let's go ahead and quickly take a look here at VRM assist temperatures. So here we're going to be linking the product page in the chat, so you guys, if you want to take a look at it, you can. But there you can just kind of see just how nicely it looks within a chassis. And again, remember, this can be adjusted. You can go essentially vertical or you can go horizontal. So you have flexibility there in terms of that. You also can see that you get that nice included, actually the nice little cable wrap to be able to go ahead and have some nice clean cable management. Okay. You can see just how simply, right, that magnetic connection design allows you to go ahead and get each one of these connected to each other and streamline essentially just the installation process, right? And here, the UI interface, if you guys want to check this out, we'll have a future live stream. We'll actually have like a little performance demo. We'll actually set it up. We'll actually go through. We'll test it all out for you and allow you to see. But you can actually check out our prior RYUJIN II stream, which actually will show you like the full UI environment, although we've made some changes and some updates. So there will be kind of some new things that are going to be present there, including some new animations, some new options in there as well, okay? So here we're going to drop down a little bit more, and this here you can see it's just an example of the VRM assist fan on and then the VRM assist fan off. And so you can actually see quite a bit of a delta between the actual temperature from it being on to it being off. Now, again, you do want to keep in mind that for the vast majority of pretty much especially high performing boards, this is a non-factor. The VRM design along with the heatsink assembly, especially on like a high-end board, the Maxima series board that we have there literally has a massive multi-stage essentially heat sink and heat pipe assembly, right? There's an entire heat pipe that's run underneath here. This is all aluminum. This extends to actually a full aluminum block, so it's quite dense. It's very, very performant, right? It really offers just a very high level of performance. So the thermal efficiency is quite high, but for users that just want that additional edge, that additional benefit at being able to even provide more airflow, or maybe similar, maybe you're in a more compact chassis, maybe you have more of a restricted airflow situation. In terms of some of those adjoining componentry, this is where you can get some additional value. And so that VRM assist fan, that's its job, is to help to provide some more airflow to that immediate surrounding area, okay? So that is going to be that design point on the RYUJIN. And again, that's applicable to all the models. So from the Noctua to the standard black model to the white edition, okay? All right, let me go ahead and see if we got any other questions that might come up in here. If not, we're going to probably get ready to wrap it up, guys. Again, this is just a quick kind of just, I'd say, first look preview on this. And like I said, as we get closer to the actual launch and availability date, we will definitely have that information for you. Make sure, of course, you can make sure to join our PC DIY group. It's linked in the description. That's where we'll keep you up to date in terms of any brand new products that you have coming out from ASUS, including the RYUJIN III. So as soon as we actually do have an availability, and as we actually have our next kind of performance live stream, where maybe we'll set it up, we'll actually have it in a build, we'll show you actually how it comes all together, and we'll do everything like that. You know, you'll also be notified for that. So Christian, I would actually say that the pump noise is actually not an issue on even the Ryu 3. Some media may not always go in and actually kind of tune the actual pump. So the pump actually has quite a bit of range in terms of how you can actually tune it. So it's quite simple. You can literally go within the Armory Crate software, and if you actually want to essentially bring down the pump, you can have it to be where it's effectively inaudible, and it's quite simple. There's literally just a slider there. So it really just comes down to your preference in terms of kind of performance and noise profile. So you know, inherent to essentially kind of the audible output, that is going to be a bit based on the kind of the parameters you set. Think about it just very much like the fans, right? If you run fans at like their max 2200 RPM, they're going to be clearly audible. But if you're running them like right now, these I think are probably running at around something maybe like 1200 RPM. I don't think you guys can even hear this on the stream, right? It's very quiet, but it's literally right here next to me, and it's not even inside of a chassis, right? So it's very much a similar situation. I wouldn't expect that any users would have any concerns resident to the pump noise. Again, you have that ability. You can go in and tune that within the Armory Crate software interface, okay? I like that. So to Poets, fantastic to have you here. He says, wooden toothpicks is what I've been using for bent fins. I actually usually use, for me, I use just a nice flathead screwdriver as what I tend to use, are sometimes like an ESD scraper tool, because they're very, very thin, flat, and I can just kind of slowly pry them, you know, from left to right if I had to kind of straighten them out. But there's all kinds of, you know, pro tips that we have from different people in the community that try different things out. So overall, I think that pretty much covers us. So let's go ahead and wrap that out with just one more quick look at, I think, at a little bit of the video for the kind of RYUJIN III. If anybody else has any quick questions, feel free to go ahead and drop them in the chat. I'm more than willing to, of course, see if we can go ahead and answer anything else. But that gives you, I think, a pretty good baseline of all the cool things that we have for this generation. And I'm going to recap again right at the end there with essentially what we have that's new for this generation. Okay, so give me 1 second right here. All right, so here you guys can see we got the RYUJIN III, got that magnetic daisy chain design. I think for a lot of people that's going to be one of the really biggest elements that we have here, but I think, of course, a key part that you don't want to forget about is that new 8th gen base pump design, that improved VRM assist fan, right? The improved flow rate, the thicker tubing, right? Essentially that new 3-phase motor, all these elements. So really from top to bottom, there's been so many elements that have been kind of improved, large and small. So we're going to again go back to our recap right here, essentially of what is new for the RYUJIN. So quick recap again. New 8th gen pump, new larger cold plate, thicker radiator, 30mm versus 27, the brand new ROG MF-12S fans, right, with a higher level of max RPM, so 2200 versus 2000, that magnetic daisy chain design, same 3.5-inch display, but now with, of course, 60 frames a second support, right, twice the onboard memory, so that's going to be clearer and smoother, essentially, animations for your GIFs and for your videos, right, the improved VRM assist fan, which is larger. It's an axial tech-based fan. There's been some revisions in terms of how it actually performs in terms of downward firing, right? That aluminum bezel, and available in white, right? So Aaron goes, I don't have any noise issues with my Gen 8 pumps. And Aaron also, if you guys didn't hear, he's actually running our RYU III, which is our current one. And I run them at max. Amazing performance. And I like that the pump increases itself based on the coolant temperature. So again, guys, you can feel very, very confident and comfortable within that. So, and rest assured, like I said, we'll cover it more in a future live stream. And I also will, of course, be working with media partners. So you'll be able to see reviews on them. This is going to be a premium product. It really is it's going to be kind of our flagship cooler in terms of our lineup. So again, you know, from a value proposition, if you're going to be looking for units that still give you really great cooling performance, are simple, look great, and are going to be lower in cost, we still would strongly recommend you check out our Strix LC II series. Our Strix LC II series, we have them in 240, 280, and 360mm. Also, in the not too distant future, we will be updating our Tough Gaming AIO lineup. We do currently have our Tough Gaming LC aRGB models too, which are also quite nice, good solid options, but we will have a refresh coming in a little bit later. So again, like always, we try to give you kind of a foundation for a good, better, best set of options to be able to align with kind of the look and feel of your build, and of course also with your budget. All right. All right, fantastic. Overall, I think that goes ahead and wraps up everything up for us, guys. So thank you guys for joining us here on the stream. It's been appreciated. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed essentially this quick kind of first look preview in terms of what we have for the next generation AIO cooler with the RYUJIN III. I think it's a fantastic addition to our cooling lineup. And as always, if you guys have any questions, comments, feedback, feel free to go ahead and drop them down in the chat. If you guys are watching us on demand, thank you so much. Maybe hit that like, that subscribe button. Make sure to follow us for more. And if you're not, make sure to go ahead and join us in our ASUS PC DIY group. It's a great community that we have with over 40,000 members that love to be able to talk about PC DIY hardware, upgrades, building, modding, overclocking, and so much more. So we'd love to have you there if you have any other questions. Take care, take it easy, and best of luck with your builds.